Okay, so the first thing I did when I imported the movie into Logic was to change the sample rate. Originally it was in 44.1, but this video is shot in 48 kilohertz, so the sample rate difference would mean the movie playback would have been a lot slower. So we sped up the Logic to match the video sample rate. It plays normally. Once the video is in and playing normally, I watched through the video and I made notes about where certain sounds were going to be, and I made them into markers, and they basically tell me exactly what frame the camera changes direction, or if it goes near money, for example in this shot. And I've made a marker for every mark where I think there should be sound. Another one here is where we see the glass break. We're not close to it, but it's where we see, so we need to make the viewer aware of that sound. And then as it comes close, I've set another marker for where we pass close to the glass. And then again, the camera changing direction. That's going to affect how we mix the sounds later on. So that's quite an important marker, I think, the camera direction and speed, as well as the actual sounds themselves. Okay, so we're just going to do some time stretching on a sample. I've got a gunshot which is a few sounds layered together, mainly just clapping. I've hit a book against the wall, threw a book on the bed, and then just chopped them up, edited them, and I've come up with this. So when we're thinking about time stretching, we're going to stretch out that time, so the frequencies, which are time dependent, are going to change themselves as well. If we stretch something twice as long, the frequencies will be halved. So in order to time stretch something without transposing it, there's going to be a lot of maths involved, so there's different algorithms that you can use to get different results. So in Logic, the classic mode, it links the, you can only change the tempo and the length of the sample by transposing the pitch, either up or down. Let me just do an example. If I drag this, I make it longer. So here I've just done two different versions of time stretch. In this one I've used a complex algorithm, and this bottom one I used a monophonic algorithm. And now if we listen to them, that's the complex one and this is the monophonic one. Now they sound completely different, but they're just two different algorithms used, and they've managed to stretch the time without necessarily transposing it to a lower frequency. For the rest of the sounds, we're going to use a mix of algorithms to get different sounds, and they're going to depend on the camera movement. So if the camera is moving really slowly, we're going to have a time stretching which with an algorithm that transposes the frequency down. So the slower the camera's moving, the lower pitch we're going to get with the sounds, and then as the camera speeds up, we'll use a different algorithms. So once all the markers were in, then it was time to get the sounds that I've edited and place them into position where I think. So the first one is just a gunshot. We're going to fade it in from here because this is where we see the gunshot. We can just see the left police officer there shooting. And then as we approach the guns, we're going through that waveform again. As we're getting close, it's silent, so I've cross-faded it. And then I've reversed the same sample going back. So as we move away from the guns now, we can hear the reverse of that sound. So that was the gun sound. We're gonna do the same process for all the other sounds, the glass explosions. Place crossfade them between forward and reverse. And once all that's done, then we can move on to the next step. Okay, so I've got my samples into Logic. I've color coded these samples as red because these are my literal samples. So I've got my gunshot, the explosion, and some broken glass in there. I've already put some fades on, and like I said earlier, I would crossfade them so the silence comes at the peak of the sound. So we've got a gunshot there, but the crossfade just here is causing silence to be there, and then as we travel away from the gun, that's when the peak comes. Down here I've got some more samples, but these are different in the sense that these are my concept samples, so these will be representing police and the clowns and the hospital in my interpretation of what they are. These have got different fades on them, just introductory and ending fades, just to make them a bit smoother. What I'll do with the red ones, I'll send them, if I get my mixer up, I'm going to send 1 to 5 to bus 1, so I get a layer for the literal sounds, and then from 6 to 11, which are my concept sounds, I'll be sending them to bus 2, which is a separate layer. And then what I'll do is I'll use these two layers independently, so I can pan them differently when I'm mixing, or I can use them against each other in sidechain compression, or any kind of interactive sort of manipulation of either of them. Okay, so now I've made the layers. What I want to do is mix the panning. So the way to do this is, because these layers haven't got a track to automate the panning, if you right click and create select arrange track, it creates a track here. So if you go into automation mode, we can then control the panning of it. And what I'll do is I'll follow the video and I'll see where the camera turns and whether certain layers need panning. This layer with the literal sounds is what I'll be mainly panning. The conceptual sounds, we won't going to be panning that, it's going to be a surround sort of feel.